So we continue with the commentary on Statement 17. Again, Statement 17, basically the statement can be translated as, if one has realized emptiness, emptiness now emerges as cause and result, cause and effect. So we have looked at how, in this tradition, we say, no matter how profound, and of course there are levels of realization of emptiness, but no matter how profound your realization of emptiness, if it just stops at a place where the mind is without obstruction, without objects, without subject, all of that, right? Kind of what we tend to think is the ultimate. Here, in this tradition, we say, not yet. Only when that clear, spacious vastness then allows you, gives you the ability, the power to perceive cause and effect in a completely unmistaken way. Only then is the true, complete realization. That's why, one reason why then, now here it says, if you have realized emptiness, then now emptiness emerges. This emptiness appears as cause and result. So, Rizin Chodra's commentary, let me read. If one has realized emptiness, then one realizes the fundamental nature of all phenomena. Now, what is the fundamental nature of all phenomena? It's not here. I'm rhetorically asking. Then he says, the fundamental nature of all phenomena is that happiness arises from what is virtuous in its nature, and suffering arises from what is non-virtuous in its nature. So this, as some of you pointed out, is chapter 1, statement 1. Chapter 1 and statement 1 says, the teachings of the Buddha show us one central, one kind of most central, most crucial point, which is they show us the nature of all phenomena, whether animate or inanimate, sentient or non-sentient. They show us the nature of all phenomena, which is emptiness, and how that nature plays out. How that nature plays out is what here Chodra is describing as, explaining as, is that happiness arises from what is virtuous in its nature, and suffering arises from what is non-virtuous in its nature. Through the vital point of that, emptiness arises as the elimination and accomplishment of cause and results. So here, elimination of causes and results is the elimination of non-virtuous, unskillful causes and results. Accomplishment of causes and results is accomplishing the virtuous and the skillful. So then he gives the quote. Lord Miller taught this to Gampopa in his farewell teaching to Gampopa. Do not interrupt the virtuous Dharma conduct. Do not stop. Even though there is no hope for Buddhahood up above, and shun even the most subtlest of evil actions, even though there's no fear concerning the bad states of birth below. And so we talked about this yesterday, right? Here is not saying, that there is no happiness and suffering, no Buddhahood, no lower realms. It says your relationship with this need to go beyond fear and hope. So that's one point being made. Another point is, therefore, we are progressing when we find ourselves becoming more and more naturally living in harmony with the principle of cause and result. Moreover, Milarepa said, since emptiness is more subtle than the many explanations you are able to make regarding emptiness, in accordance with authoritative scriptures and reasoning, it is therefore difficult to understand emptiness and to develop confidence. So Milarepa here is making a difference, pointing out the difference. He says, since emptiness, the actual object of our realization, emptiness, is more subtle, more difficult to really perceive, then those explanations that are given about emptiness in accordance with quoting this scripture or that scripture, in accordance with, appealing to your reasoning, to your logic system, it says, yes, there are all those things, but the actual object of realization, this actual emptiness, is more subtle than that. It is therefore difficult to really understand this emptiness and to develop confidence. Having great confidence in emptiness, and then understanding that emptiness itself arises as cause and result, you will automatically engage in efforts towards eliminating and accomplishing cause and result, establishing virtue, abandoning evil. Since this great confidence in cause and result is the root of all dharmas, it is very important to be meticulous and make efforts towards the practice of abandoning evil and accomplishing virtue. Furthermore, in the Samadhi Raja Sutra, it says, even though it is understood that in true reality there is no ripening of karma, virtuous and non-virtuous activity never goes to waste. Dwelling in peace. This is the second part of this quote that Khenpo Kunpal's commentary, I don't think he finished this. The second part of the quote is, dwelling in peace is the vehicle of partaker Buddhas, and the Shravakas follow the sound of liberation. Meaning, here Samadhi Raja Sutra is contrasting the lower attainments of the hearers and the solitary realizers. Samadhi Raja Sutra says, the emptiness that is realized by the hearers at the end of their training, of their path, and of the solitary realizers at the end of their training, at the end of their path, that kind of emptiness that they realize, yes, kind of leads to a state of complete pacification of all suffering, but the all-knowing quality of the mind is not manifested. So that's called partial awakening. In the Mahayana system, it says solitary realizers and hearer Buddhists. What they realize is this partial enlightenment, where they have attained that aspect, that they have attained that realization of emptiness that is in the aspect of all confusion is cleared. Their minds are now, no longer agitated, so like this kind of quiet, but lacking the arising of Buddha qualities, lacking in that. In other words, we don't stop there. This is not what we should aim for. Moreover, Lord Pamudrupa said, simply mouthing off the view will not help. If you decisively pierce to the heart of the matter and abide in the state of one taste, then you will actualize all of cause and result. If one realizes emptiness, the realization of all dharmas as only cause and result is the natural or fundamental nature. So Chodra ends his commentary by saying, if you realize emptiness, truly realize emptiness, then the realization of all phenomena as only cause and result, that is the natural or the fundamental nature. Here, Shi Sambab, this is a very special vocabulary used in the first Vajra statement. Chukun Shi Sambab ki nelukten, that first statement. Shi is nature or essence. Bab is how it appears, how it plays out, how it manifests. Sam is all. So Shi is the essence, which is emptiness, or how it plays out as cause and effect. This, in these two aspects, is the fundamental nature. Then Professor Zovich provides these notes. Despite a rather brief treatment in Choki Drakpa's commentary, the present Vajra statement is of fundamental importance for some other statements. It has been discussed in greatest detail in both the Dorshema and the Rinjangma. Dorshema and Rinjangma being the two earliest commentaries on the Gongchik, written by disciples and grand disciples of Jigten Sumgon. According to the Dorshema, several general views have to be discussed and corrected in the context of this topic. One of them, probably an aside but nevertheless an interesting remark, concerns the realization of the nature of the mind, which is a precondition for the abandonment of rebirth in the three realms. So therefore, this kind of side point, but also interesting, according to Professor Zovich. According to some people, says Dorje Sherab, that realization is different from the realization of the true reality of all dharmas, in that the nature of the mind is confined to the true reality of merely one's own awareness, one's own mind. On the other hand, the true reality of all phenomena is vast, since it exists as the beginningless, all-pervading nature. Here Dorje Sherab says, the nature of the mind is an expression of our tradition. Here we maintain that all phenomena are no different from our own mind. And since the mind's nature is measureless and not inclined toward any side, it is beyond the proliferating, the conceptualizing mind, unquote. So in other words, in the nature of the mind, which is vast and comprises all phenomena, one cannot distinguish the selflessness of phenomena and the selflessness of persons. Some of you, this will be very interesting to hear this. Maybe for some other of you, don't know what's going on. It's okay. We all, in our group, different levels. Then sometimes even if you have the background, you forget, that, oh, this is really meaningful. That can also happen, but it's okay. Now, the actual point of this topic, so then coming back, The actual point of this topic is a discussion of the nature of the realization of emptiness and what ensues from it. And then what happens when you have this realization of emptiness? The common view is, as explained in the Dorshema, that a yogi teacher, a practitioner, a great practitioner teacher, who has realized the mind, bestows on a disciple the three trainings that abandon non-virtue and accomplish virtue as pith instructions. Then, by training in these instructions, an excellent samadhi arises in the disciple's mind. Then, remaining in this meditative equipoise, in this samadhi, and not being attached to that samadhi, they can realize the essence of the mind that is free from all extremes of proliferation, of conceptualization, of elaboration. Then, Dorje Sherab says, people assume. So up until now, everything is fine. But then, here, when the mind remains in meditative equipoise, not attached to that samadhi, to that meditative equipoise, realizes the essence of mind is free from all extremes, then people assume that, here's the Dorje Sherab quote from Dorje Sherab, by watching mind's nature with the eye of that realization, all mental conceptions of virtue and non-virtue and all of karma and result will be birthless. Furthermore, the mind and the thoughts arising from the mind will also not be perceived. The body and all appearances will not be perceived. Cause and result will not be perceived. Karma and karmic ripening will also not be perceived. Finally, all the appearances that variously appear will be without appearance, and one will realize them as emptiness. So that everything disappears, you know. And people think. Thus, henceforth, one must not, and then out of this, out of seeing this, how they all disappear, you know. Thus, henceforth, then they think, oh, from now on, one must not accomplish virtue, one must not abandon non-virtue, and one must not accomplish any results at all through a virtuous or non-virtuous mind, and be like space. And in that way, the two shining lights are inseparably mix. Your mind and this nature of emptiness, they mix. Like little rivers, rivulets flowing into the ocean, or two spaces being merged. One has exhausted the cause of entering samsara. Therefore, they say, I do not put a skull cup on my head anymore, or I do not put a skull on top of my head anymore. And they hold that after they have mastered this realization, dependent origination of cause and effect is now nullified. It's now no more relevant. Finished, done, complete. This is how the misunderstanding arose. So Dorje Sherab is saying, this is how this kind of understanding turned to be. And so Dorje Sherab says, you know, this is not a common mistake, and this is not like a beginner's mistake even. In fact, you can find, so he says, so therefore they can also quote, for example, in one tantra it says, its ultimate result arises at the time when there are no more causes and results. It says, so they can quote some tantra that says that. Or they can quote another text, you know, that says, the beginning of all phenomena, the bringing of all phenomena to an exhaustion is the essential meaning, the ultimate view, the great seal. They also quote a text that is even, you know, said to be taught by Milarepa. And that text says, from the perspective of absolute truth, not only do obstacles not exist, even Buddhas don't exist. In the ultimate truth, there is no mind, and one has brought all phenomena to exhaustion. Finish. In fact, this quote, you see it on Facebook all the time. From the perspective of absolute truth, not only do obstacles not exist, even Buddhas don't exist. This one is, this particular, if I remember correctly, this is when Seringma, these 5 spirit sisters that are like the boss of this one mountain region that Milarepa came to. And Milarepa wanted to stay there in retreat. So these 5 spirit sisters are very powerful. They see Milarepa, then they're like, this guy, he thinks he is going to practice here, but this is our territory. So they cause trouble for him. Interestingly, Seringma, in the past, swore their allegiance to Guru Rinpoche, according to stories that we have. They already became disciples of Guru Rinpoche. But nonetheless, they're very proud of their own attainments. They were spirits. They are spirits, Seringma. 5 of them, related to 5 peaks in the mountain range in Tibet. So when Milarepa comes, like 2-3 centuries later, they're like, this guy. So then they cause him trouble. But really what they're doing is they're testing him and see, should we allow this guy to stay here and do his practice, or should we chase him away? So you see, Seringma, the sisters, and they were already very advanced disciples of Guru Rinpoche. So maybe teaching us a lesson too, sometimes when people turn up at the Dharma Center, you might have to test them and chase them away. Some of you that were with us last night got a little worried. The truth is that in the room, it wasn't, I didn't feel, but I did feel for May and Judy, because he was monkeying behind them. May and Judy couldn't exactly see what's going on, but he was monkeying around, basically monkeying around. As if to elaborate on that situation, it's fine. Frankly, I can tell you, if he had his backpack, small backpack, if he had his small backpack with him right there, I would be a little bit more concerned. Like, you don't know what's in there, he pulls something out, but then he doesn't have, his backpack was way over there. And then I understood more, like, he's just monkeying around. Best just not to entertain. I could not tell if it was like mental illness or not. Especially if it is mental illness, I think if you engage, it feeds them, then it just, becomes bigger and bigger. Then you just let them exhaust themselves. But here, in this example, Seringma, even with Milarepa, they're like, no, you show us, that you are serious here, otherwise, shoo, get out. So Seringma, they were causing all kinds of problems, psychic problems, sending spirits, sending things. It was in that context when Milarepa tried to overcome this. I think it was in that context. Or there's another time where 3 goblins in another cave, like what we would call goblins, were trying to cause trouble for Milarepa. And Milarepa tried to use this technique, that technique. Finally, it says that when he remembers that nature of emptiness, then they all dissolve. And this is probably when he says, from the perspective of absolute truth, not only do obstacles don't exist, even Buddhas don't exist. That's how he dispelled the obstacle. So yes, you can quote things like this for sure. So Dorje Sherab is quite aware. Dorje Sherab is well educated. He said, I understand where this comes from. So anyway, Professor Zovish, he continues, the situation recalls the Samye debate, where Tibetan historical sources have ascribed similar views to the Chinese master Hershang Mohoyan. Such statements, however, are only acceptable on the level of absolute truth and concerning the view, but they are not acceptable as general statements or, as in the present case, as guidelines for conduct. So if such statements appear, instantly you should know at least, this concerns view. But view should not be, the statement that concerns the view should not be confused with conduct. Now my personal opinion. I would phrase this a little differently. I would say that even view, maybe we can still work on it. Even on the level of view, maybe still not acceptable. That from the perspective of absolute truth, anyway, because elsewhere we see, right, Kyobpa Rinpoche says, view, meditation, and conduct do not contradict. So anyway, Dorje Sherab relates an interesting detail concerning Jigten Sumgon's training under Pamodrupa, whom he attended for a little over 2 years. As a result of the first year, Jigten Sumgon realized all phenomena to be emptiness, and he understood that, so this is quoting Dorje Sherab, at the time of death I will become a Buddha. All concerns can be cast aside now. Now, all concerns can be cast aside. Someone endowed with realization does not take rebirth again, since at the time of dying, the two kinds of luminosity will merge and one attains peace. His luminosity of his mind and the luminosity of the nature of all phenomena would merge, and then that's it. In the first intermediate state, I will become a Buddha. Moreover, even though now, while still alive, the conceptions of cause, karma, and afflictions arise, through the vital point of there being emptiness in nature, they can no longer bind me. I'm no longer controlled by. And so he had this kind of realization, this kind of understanding. They are like hemp rope burned by fire. It still has its form, as it is not destroyed in its structure, but can no longer bind because its nature has disappeared. So if you have a hemp rope, thick, and fire burns it, apparently it maintains its form, but its integrity isn't there. Just like the example I used that maybe you and I have seen before. Like these days, especially those glossy printed, magazines or material. When it's burned, you can still see, those words. But the moment you touch, it crumbles. This is the example. But now, during the second year, however, Jigten Sumgon understood that that realization that he had in that first year is not the ultimate one. In that second year, Pamodrupa taught many Jatakas, the stories of the former lives of the Buddha, and also taught the Dharma wheel of ultimate definitive truth, namely the sutras of the third wheel, the Buddha Nature Sutras. Jigten Sumgon gained the impression that Pamodrupa had taught this, the Jatakas, for his benefit alone. And so he felt that, why suddenly second year, Pamodrupa starts talking about Jataka tales, telling all these stories about cause and effect, is to wake Jigten Sumgon up and say, you think your realization of emptiness is the ultimate. No. Now you have to see how karma, cause and effect works. Especially in the context of becoming a Buddha that can guide others, if you have no power, no ability to see how exactly cause and effect works, you cannot help others. In fact, the more you try to help others, the more of a mess you could end up making. Sometimes helping others is doing something to stop them. Sometimes helping others is not stopping them. You know? Even if it looks like they're going to do something that is going to be a mistake. Sometimes, to really help them, you don't do anything. So knowing when to do and when not to do, very hard. Just simple example of last night. I have no idea what to do, what not to do. Very hard, because we cannot see, So then, he felt that he was the only one who had understood that cause and result exist within emptiness. So in the second year, with Pamodrupa giving more instructions like that, so this is Pamodrupa teaching publicly. It's not like Pamodrupa pulled him aside and said, "Hey, Jigten Sumgon, you." Sometimes we think we want this, we want our teacher to like, "Hey." But in the past, students would approach the teacher in a very careful way, meaning not overdo it. Because when you overdo it, it becomes meaningless. Then more importantly, you try to figure out. Because it is in that trying that you actually work through your own confusion. So Jigten Sumgon is just sitting there, day after day, watching, hearing Pamodrupa teach this Jataka, then this Jataka. Then he starts to see a pattern, He said, the first year here, he barely talked about this. And then I think I have realized the final one. I'm not going to be a Buddha after this life is over. Then he starts teaching about the Jatakas. Now, in this second year, he felt that he was the only one who had understood that cause and result exist within emptiness. That this has an impact on how the realized person should behave, and that to follow such a conduct after realizing emptiness is an act of compassion. One result of such a realization was that he abandoned his lay status and took full ordination. As I pointed out later, the other day. But this actually happened a few years further down the road. But the original insight came from this time. Moreover, from then on, he made a conscious effort to conduct himself, quote, all the more with the purity of body, and to adorn himself with the supreme training of disciplined conduct, unquote. Choki Drakpa quotes Milarepa twice, pointing out that virtuous conduct is not to be interrupted, and even the most subtle evil is to be shunned at all times, even when one has already attained full realization. In particular, he states that emptiness, quote, itself arises as cause and result, unquote, and that one will, quote, automatically engage in efforts regarding eliminating and accomplishing of cause and result, and in efforts of establishing virtue and abandoning evil, unquote. Then Dorje gives another quotation from Gampopa. Gampopa says, the Jowa Kadampa Lama said, having realized emptiness, one will proceed very attentively concerning karma, cause and result. That is very right. Now that I have gained the experience, I understand that this is a profound Dharma transmission that the Kadampa possesses. I am called a yogi, but I am very attentive concerning karma, cause and result. This is a pith instruction taught by my gurus. Since there is a lineage from the Lord Atisha, there is no chance that it could be otherwise. Another quote from Gampopa. In general, if you do not want to practice the teachings, then don't. But from the moment of deciding that you will practice the teachings onward, this attentiveness to cause and result is of great importance. I am called a yogi, but I am very attentive to karma and result. This is the pith instructions of my Guru Me, his Kadampa Guru. If one does not pay attention to karma and result, one has not pierced the heart of the matter. It does not help to refer to some high view, because the higher the place, the deeper the abyss. Where you may wind up is unpredictable. Gampopa warns like that. Yes, Judy?
It seems like there are two things that I've gotten out of this, and one of them is we don't know what we don't know. So we think we know something and actually we don't. But
yes,
if you realize emptiness without understanding cause and effect, you can, in an effort to help someone make a wrong decision, which is non-virtuous, may produce suffering. So therefore, karmic causality is still at work, even within emptiness.
Yes.
Okay. And so you got to keep going.
Yes. Yeah. Then continuing, this is very helpful, this section on notes. Having established a lineage for such a teaching, having established Gampopa and Dorje Sherab, now Dorje Sherab also provides examples. This is good. These examples, these stories are really important. So many of us, when we learn Dharma, we learn from like theory, and theory are necessarily very clean, like very straight lines being drawn, 3 types of this. And the way you distinguish the first from the second is like this, and the second and the third is like this, and then there's like this, then there's like this, right? So many of you, I think, because you were impressed by Buddhism's ability to seem to, so clearly, so logically, lay out things, especially if you grew up in some religious tradition that says, don't ask. Then you find something like Buddhism, you're like, wow, right? So yes, in some ways, a lot of confidence, But then, if you learn this long enough, and if you really pay attention to your process, you will see that sometimes, right, that clarity, that seeming, the theory so clear, right? If you're not careful, this is my own experience, it will make you try to conform to that description and make you then very rigid. Yeah? It will make you very rigid. And because now you say, oh, it says 3. Then you try to sort, your experience of suffering exactly into 3. And no 4. 4 will be 1 too many. 2 will not be enough. Now you're like a Monty Python, the life of Brian. How to pull the hand grenade to kill the evil rabbit. That whole scene. Now become, very rigid. This is one possible scenario that might come up. If you learn Buddhism primarily through like these very cleanly organized theories. The other potential danger that may come up is when life becomes more messy and you can no longer fit into the theory, then you give up, you lose faith. Intellectually, maybe you won't lose faith, but intellectually it has its limits, because most of suffering is not happening on the intellectual level. Most of us are not diligent enough to suffer on the intellectual level. That takes a lot of work. Most of our suffering is happening on like this level, on the gut level, as we say, you know. It's not based on logic. It's not intellectual suffering, you know. But if we have more access to more stories of this sort, and then kind of to try to tease out, to kind of draw out, what are the stories telling us? That, you know, in some ways is closer to how we actually experience life, how life actually happens. Yes, one of the obstacles with stories is then all these stories, you know, often, to be fair, like Jatakas and all that, have a lot of supernatural elements. So then we also need, you and me, develop the skills of how to navigate through the supernatural elements to be able to see the main lessons that these stories are telling us, and not get distracted, or distracted in the sense of either getting very excited and liking the magic, or distracted like, oh my gosh, this is just crazy, I cannot deal with it. Yeah, so anyway, here, Jitsim Miller, for instance, from time to time sang songs in the village and thereby contributed to the Guru's household with what he gained from the villages. And so this is when Milarepa was still with Marpa, because Milarepa was poor, and Marpa, you know, was quite demanding. You know, it's like, Dharma is not free. Marpa says that to Milarepa. Oh, interestingly, elsewhere, Marpa also says, you know, the Dharma doesn't belong to anyone. It's not mine, it's not yours. But with Milarepa, Marpa would always remind him, Dharma is not free. I worked very hard to accumulate the wealth necessary to make these journeys, to bring the Dharma back. And you, miserable beggar, you want my Dharma? Pay up. Marpa was really amazing, you know. Because we know elsewhere, Marpa says, you know, Dharma doesn't belong to anyone. It's not mine, it's not yours. It cannot be exchanged with money. But he probably understood Milarepa's psyche, Milarepa's baggage. Milarepa had grown up in a well-to-do family, but then when his father died, his relatives, his uncle, aunt, basically took over control of the family wealth and basically stole everything from Milarepa and Milarepa's mom and sister. So Milarepa had money issues, as we would say it. Was very stuck on that, probably, you know, resenting that, you know, what belonged to him somebody stole, and probably had a complex of like, you know, I have no money now, I'm poor now. So what does Marpa do? Wow. For me, if someone like Milarepa comes to me, I'm not saying I'm Marpa at all. I'm saying if someone comes to me with Milarepa's background, I would probably say, oh, don't worry about the money. Yes, it's okay. You know, you just, you know, this donation we are saying, it's okay. You know, just come. Why? Because I want to be liked. I don't want other people to criticize me and say, oh, this Han, you know, the guy has no money. You know, this Han so greedy. Look at, you know, he's living comfortably. He's still asking this guy for money. Marpa doesn't care, you know, because Marpa truly is concerned about Milarepa, and Marpa realized emptiness, realized cause and effect. So Marpa would, in a way, torture Milarepa skillfully. Like, hey, where's money? Yes, so Milarepa had to go to the village. entertain people, singing Dharma songs, performing some rituals, collect money, bring back and give to his guru. Probably at the beginning, very resentful, because basically the guru is living in a mansion. Milarepa used to live in a mansion, lost it. Now, to get Dharma, has to beg, has to humble himself and work through, basically. So anyway, side point. Yeah. So he gained, so he contributed to the Guru's household with what he gained from the villagers. The positive result of that was that later in his life, the Dakinis invited him to Dia Ganachakra. And Tashi Seringma, the 5 sisters, the main one, Jomo Tashi Seringma, offered yogurt with a spoon made of precious stone. So because Milarepa, despite his poverty situation, went around begging, entertaining others to bring some money back to offer to Marpa, later on, the Dakinis invite Milarepa to their talk offering, which is the most marvelous talk offering. Seringma gives him yogurt with this very special spoon. A negative result experienced later in his life was that he had to sustain himself with unsalted nettle soup because of the hail he brought down on the fields of his family's enemies. Likewise, some other things that Milarepa did also ripened in having to eat nettles. Like nettle, basically nobody wants to eat, Unsalted means, he didn't even have enough money to get a little bit of salt. Similarly, Jigten Sumgon experienced almost immediate karmic retribution after Pamodrupa's death, when he led the community of Pamodru. Because he soon got into conflicts with the community, he finally had to secretly leave Pamodru. So Jigten Sumgon, even though he was very accomplished, when his teacher died, he was somehow put in the position of leading his teacher's community. Interestingly, at that point, he wasn't even a monk yet, when majority of Pamodrupa's disciples were monks. Somehow he was put into a leadership position, but instantly everybody, although he was put into, it's unclear how he was put into that position, but instantly everybody disagreed with him. And maybe even the people who agreed he should be the leader start to have quarrels with him. And he wasn't able to please anyone. And so much so that it stressed him so much, in the middle of the night he ran away. And thus the key point, that cause and result are not nullified by emptiness, and that results infallibly arise from causes, even after emptiness have been realized, has been established through the lineage master's instructions and examples. Toward the end of his comments on this Vajra statement, Dorje Sherab also presents 2 quotes to establish A, that despite emptiness, one has to continue one's attentive awareness to cause and result, and B, that even when one has realized true reality, results infallibly arise from causes. The Anavatapta Sutra teaches the first point. Whatever arises from conditions does not arise. It does not have the nature of being arisen. Whatever depends on conditions is emptiness. Whoever understands emptiness is one with attentive awareness. And in the same sutra, it is said that even though one understands that there is no ripening of karma in true reality, virtuous and non-virtuous activity never goes to waste. Then Dorje Sherab also quotes from Nagarjuna. So maybe we don't need to look at all of that. But if you have this book, slowly go through this. There are more that this section presents. We have already have 3, if not 4, classes on statement 17. Maybe you're already tired. You're like, yes, cause and result. Can we move on? Yes, cause and result. Page 9. Guru Rinpoche, Buddha of the 3 times great bliss, source of all siddhis, wrathful subduer of maras, who removes all obstacles, grant your blessings, we pray. Through them may all obstacles, outer, inner, and secret, be quelled, and may all our aspirations be fulfilled. Dusan Sanje Guru Rinpoche Ngadu Kunda Deva Chimpe Sha Bharje Kunse Dudu Drabo Se Sowa Depso Jinji Lamdem Se Chinang Sangwe Bharje Shiva Dang Samba Langi Drubar Jinji Dusan Sanje Guru Rinpoche Ngadu Kunda Deva Chimpe Sha Bharje Kunse Dudu Drabo Se So what so jinje lamdu so chinang samwe parje shiva dang sambalunge drupara jinje lam. Desa sanje guru rinpoche ngadu kunda deva jimba sham parje kunsa dudu drumbo sa. So what so jinje lamdu so chinang samwe parje shiva dang sambalunge drupara jinje lam. Sublime, precious, venerable, and glorious root and lineage gurus, assembly of Idam deities, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas dwelling in the 10 directions, and all assemblies of Viras, Viranis, Yoginis, and Dakinis, please heed me. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana and the inherent root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly dharmas, the 4 causes of samsara, and the resultant states of hearers and solitary realizers. And may all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, particularly those enemies who hate us, obstructors who harm those who create obstacles, maras who mislead, and their mara retinues, have happiness, be separated from suffering, and quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, and precious Bodhi. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may we benefit sentient beings with body, speech, and mind. May the afflictive thoughts of attachment, aversion, ignorance, pride, and jealousy not arise in my mind stream. May thoughts of name, fame, gain, respect, and so forth in this life not arise for even a moment. With my mind stream moistened by love, compassion, and bodhicitta, may I come under the care of virtuous spiritual friends, and having become as limitless as space, may I achieve the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. By the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious Bodhi. Okay, goodbye everyone. See you tomorrow.